Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the Social Sales Engineering livestream. We're bringing you the best people, ideas, thought provokers, and hopefully a sprinkle of entertainment into your sales engineering careers every Wednesday. My name is Lydia, and I am so happy to be back after a 2-week hiatus unfortunately, due to COVID. Thank you. And as always, I am joined by my co-host Patrick. Hello. And it's so nice to be live again on the stream. And before we even start, I want to thank everyone because I've been seeing on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and everyone's been so nice and kind and wishing me to get better soon and all that. So thank you so much, everyone. It's been really, really nice. But yeah, I guess without further ado, we have a guest today, and his name is Damian. Hello, Damian.
Hello, Lydia and Patrick. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And a quick, just 2-sentence introduction to Damon, and then I'll leave the floor to him to introduce himself. But in the daytime, he is a senior security sales engineer at Fearfoot. And like Batman during the night, he is acting as a founder of a Cyber Informants, which is a private community of specifically cyber-oriented SEs. I think currently in the States only, but you are trying to branch out in the over here at Europe as well?
Yeah, we are a global community. So the community we're actually building is asynchronous. So unlike Slack, you can leave messages any time of the day, and we all communicate to each other throughout different time zones. It's pretty nice.
Amazing. No, but thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to have a conversation.
Yeah, welcome to the show. And actually, you suggested this topic, right?
Yeah.
How to know your audience. What's behind that? So what's going on in your mind right now? Why is your brain working on this topic, knowing your audience?
Yeah, it's a good one. So I've worked for several startups throughout my career, and whether you're just getting going or a more established industry, I think the most common question that I see is, okay, who do you sell to? And it's always like, oh, we sell to this executive, like the CTO or maybe the CISO or even the CIO. And I think what most people don't realize is you don't actually sell to that individual, right? It's oftentimes they're part of the buying process, right? But they're not the person you actually sell to. They're often the person that holds the budget. And it's how do you create the audience around them that you need to engage with from a sales motion, from a relationship building perspective, who's going to use this product when you sign the deal and then leave behind. So creating that audience, I think, is core to establishing yourself not only to those different roles or those different personas, but then helping enable them to either consume your product or your service and really make a difference internally.
Very nice. So why is this interesting for me as a sales engineer? Isn't that just the account executive's job?
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, I think you of all people know that social selling has really changed kind of like the role of the sales engineer, right? It's not just the account executive's job anymore. It's really on us as the SC to be the technical expert, understand the product, but also really understand the pain points that a lot of our customers are going through. And if you look at it from the perspective of, all right, well, I sell this product and it solves this pain point, that may be true, but the pain point and the solution that you bring to the table is going to change depending upon who you talk to. And whether you're selling to, an individual user or, in the enterprise space where you have at a minimum 5 to 7 people involved in the buying process, each one of them is going to have a very different need. And knowing that audience is what's going to help you drive the deal forward faster than anything else.
So what are, you're in the cybersecurity area,
yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
What are examples of different pains, like where you would leave somebody else like completely off, right? Talking to the C-level maybe and talking to a security engineer. What would be different pains that you just mentioned, where you just wouldn't hit the nail if you would
Yeah,
name it?
that's a good point. So let's take a security product, for example, right? You
Yeah.
ultimately you're going to look for the CISO or like the VP of security to really be the budget holder and officially, make the sign off and buy the tool. But as part of that sales motion, you often have, let's just look application security, for example. You have the AppSec engineer or the AppSec team who's going to be responsible for implementing and using the tool. You might have security operations who gets the output from that tool or that solution that needs to action some of the data coming out of it. You've got the procurement team, right, who needs to see a specific set of like, what does the data sheet look like? What are the net terms for the deal itself? And then oftentimes you might have like either a secondary or even tertiary group with like the developers, for example, who aren't in security, but are the ones you're going to be pushing notifications to as part of the output of this tool. So like I just named 5 different individuals, and each one of those has like different needs and different pain points in terms of, how do you work with them? So if I sell to the application security team and the AppSec team, they run their scan, they do their thing with the tool, and they look at the output and they say, all right, well, we have these issues or these vulnerabilities. Let's send that over to the development team. The development team might consider those vulnerabilities on top of all the other work that they already have going on. So instead of just pushing data from one team to another, you need to be able to help the AppSec team deliver results, outputs from your solution to the then end consumer of that, which is development, and they need to in a way that's going to make it worthwhile to action quickly along the way.
I have a question for you, Damian, if it's all right. Just listening to it's fairly easy to hear that you're very good at seeing the role, seeing the people that you're talking to, and recognizing how do you align with their pain points. Well, is that an experience-based thing, or do you have a process of introducing yourself to those people, having those initial conversations? How do you learn about those pain points when you first sort of come into a deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've learned this through experience over time, right? And the way I usually look at this is first, I always ask the question internally, right? The companies that I work for is what's the difference between a persona and an audience? And often people kind of like, they tilt their head like this and they're like, what? Who? So that's usually the first question. And the way I break it down is personas, it used to be a marketing term of like a who do you sell to, who do you engage with. I think the term is still relevant, but the context has changed, right? The persona is just an individual. What is important about that individual, what makes up that individual. So in the example that I just gave, I mentioned 5 different personas, whether you're in development or security, procurement, or you're at the executive level. Each person has their own persona, but it's those different personas that you need to pull together and create your unique audience. And the audience that you talk to will change every time because it changes from vertical to vertical. It changes based on the size of the company. And as you, kind of tweak those different audiences, that's how you start to learn to speak to them. So you may know common pain points for each one of the personas and those individuals, but taking the time to see how those things work together, it's less of a technology lens and it's more of a business lens, right? Like, how does this business build an application? How does this business produce a product? How do all those different people kind of come together on those different teams to establish that outcome? And then as you understand each of those outcomes from the teams, you look for commonalities. And it's the commonality across your audience that really helps you engage better along the way.
And those should be the points that you are hitting throughout your engagement with them.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes those different pieces are really good ways to align your marketing messaging too, right? And take back to your marketing team. So this is like a quick win if you ever want some brownie points as the sales engineer, right? It's like bring back the key messaging from the field to your friends in marketing and say, hey, here's some commonalities across like the different personas that we talk to along the way. But when you're in a sales motion, I say it very contritely, but you're actually talking to people, and it's like, how do you help them? What are their personal goals and what are their professional goals? And like, how do I translate those things into different pain points that they have and help them move those things forward?
Speaking of the pain points, Ramsey's just coming in with the comment. Hey, Ramsey, lovely to see you in the comment section. Say, by the way, everyone tuning in live with us, please feel free to comment, say hello, ask your questions as we're going along. More than happy to take you guys through it. So Ramsey's question is, have you had stakeholders with conflicting or opposing pain points? If so, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think one of the hardest things that I have seen is you have two opposing views, or if you're either selling something or your solution delivers something that jeopardizes somebody's job, right? Everybody immediately gets on the defensive about that. And you have to tread very lightly in here. I think for these conflicting viewpoints, though, what I found helpful is you want to have a conversation with the different stakeholders involved and help them see other viewpoints among the audience. So for example, like if development and security are at odds over something, which is often the case, right? You take it from just a completely neutral arbitrator perspective where you say, what's the governance requirement in this case, right? Like governance says you need this tool from a security perspective, and development has to comply with this requirement from a governance perspective. In that case, you're now taking like the personal conflict between those two stakeholders completely out of the equation and making it from the perspective of, we have this requirement that we have to adhere to. How do we make it easy for application security and development to work together to meet the requirement without that personal conflict involved? And in that case, you're kind of removing the friction because there's no longer that, personal conflict. It's a third party component that is driving the conversation forward.
Seems like you're acting like a mediator, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Some kind of psychology getting in there. No, really
absolutely.
Yeah. And what about your research? So if I'm pretty new in cybersecurity, I think I would have major troubles to come up with pain points or even insights, right? So this is something that's also interesting. Maybe you can talk about later. So how can I bring insights that they don't know about themselves right now, right? How do you do the research for different audiences or personas, and how would I divide this? So maybe a follow-up question. First, audience for me sounded like an abstraction for multiple personas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you actually go a level higher, like marketing would go. I think you said this, right? So you're looking for those unique insights or unique like things that they bond together, or that they like build a group.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So it's like the personal attribute around it, right? What is a personal pain point for somebody who holds this role or this title? But then where are the commonalities of pain points across, the wider group? So I'll give you a good example. In looking at products, right? Every single person is going to have a what does it do question. It's like the most foundational question of commonality among people. And whether it's from procurement to the executives or to the operators of the product, the what does it do usually can be distilled down to something like a data sheet, right? So then when you have this one document, it's something you can very easily give to multiple individuals that answers the question of what does it do. That sets the baseline. But then your roles that you engage with are then going to have unique pain points to themselves, which you may not necessarily have, concrete documentation for. And in this case, it's I think to your point, how do you do the research and build that? And the number one answer I always give is that you cannot replace getting out and talking to your audience, right? Like you just have to have these sales conversations. You have to have conversations with people inside of your ICP, outside of your ICP. It helps you both quantify like who you want to sell to and how it helps the sales motion, but also who you don't want to talk to, right? I think as sales engineers and just sales in general, one of the things that we get pulled into a lot is, demo for this person or POC for that person, and only to find out like there was no budget holder, or they're the wrong fit, or they're in the wrong industry for us to be able to kind of come up with a solution. So having these conversations is the best way to really, really quickly quantify who you should be talking to and who you can help and who you can't. And kind of to your point earlier about the isn't this the account executive's job, right? I think as as the sales engineer, you really get to kind of tap into all these different parts of the business. So marketing and working with them from the perspective of who's in our audience, who are our personas built against, who do we want to talk to. The best way, if you want to capture some information, if you have like a sales development rep, like an SDR type function or BDR type function, sit on a couple of calls with them or even listen to the call recordings from them, because they're the ones, on the phone, sending emails, talking to individuals all day long. And you don't always get to hear all of that, but that's the kind of raw data you want, right? You have 60 seconds to convince someone to take a meeting with you. What are you going to say? What is going to resonate with them? And the more things you hear, the more rejection you get, honestly, helps you continuously shape how you want to go back and deliver a message to someone.
Sales engineers don't like rejection, I think. That's why they are sales engineers.
No.
But Lydia, over there. Have you spoke to your SDR?
No, but that is a lot longer story around how big corporations tend to have this very weird sort of pen holding of different sections of their business where there's
Not
really
true. Not
you
true.
would be I guess that's a story for another time. Because I tried, Patrick, and I hit a big stone wall.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Like Damien, just for you, we had two very experienced SDRs in our show, like a month ago or even longer. And Lydia promised to talk to her SDRs to get some bonding in place. But yeah, it seems to be tough. Yeah.
It is a little bit tough, but and actually that's a really good point. It might be worth having a little post about, how do you, because I still need to figure it out. How do you deal with this in a bigger corporation like I am at the moment? Because I can imagine in the startup function, it's a lot easier of just approaching them saying like, hey, this is how we do things. Like, can we work together? Can I understand what you guys are doing? Whilst what I got was a wall of corporates, which was quite fascinating.
One thing you can try to, if you have it within the organization, a lot of times you have tools like Gong that do a lot of the call recordings where you can kind of go back and listen to them. A little different in the EU. You guys have much stricter privacy standards than the US, so it doesn't always fly from that perspective. But that is another tactic that we take in the US.
Yep. But there's one more point, right? You want to also, you have an opportunity when you talk directly to SDRs. Because you can also say like, it would be great if you ask this qualifying question before, right? So because maybe you talk to Oracle, IBM, let's take this again, and you get scheduled as a discovery call, but in which industry? What are we talking about, right? So things like this might be missing or whatever, right? Just as an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they're really big companies, it's hard to narrow it down too, right? Like if you're going to take let's say you want to take a meeting with, an IBM or an Oracle, in which vertical? they're exactly.
in. Yeah. So that's just a training bit and learning from each other. I think SDRs and SEs have great things to share, a lot of things to share.
Yeah, for sure. And you have this opportunity to kind of work across all these different teams too. So like SDR is a great function to talk to. We mentioned the marketing function is a great one to talk to. And look at product, right? Product is often one of those areas where they love customer conversations, like to be able to get out there, talk to customers. And they don't always get the chance to do it, especially just like we're all busy these days, right? You never get the chance to really get that feedback from the customers. It could be a great, bonding exercise internally to have those conversations with them. And if you are busy or you work across multiple time zones, spin up a Google Doc, right? Just customer conversations this week and just give them some bullet points on like, here's the phrasing that resonates with them. I actually worked for one organization where we changed in the product, just like the navigation labels that we used inside the product. And so a tremendous uptick in the amount of people that got into the product and started using it. And it wasn't like we came up with this crazy new feature. We just shifted how we labeled things to be more in line with their language. And like, that's the kind of outcome you can get by just having these conversations.
That's the curse of knowledge, right? I think Don Carmichael had a quote this week. You know exactly what this label means, but your users...
they have no idea what you mean by that.
Yes.
But I really love the idea of being that, and I think to a huge degree, the role of the SE is exactly to be that middle point between all of these teams, because in most of organizations, at least, we are sort of in the middle of the process, and we are between product management, we are between SDRs, we are between sales. So there's a lot of communication, a lot of talking that we need to do between all of those groups. But as Ramsey's question sort of indicate, sometimes salespeople want to limit how much SEs talk to specifically to customers. Is this something that anyone else in the stream has seen, and what are your thoughts as to why that is happening?
Yeah, I have seen this before, especially in like larger organizations where I don't want to say people get territorial, but there is to a degree this like territorial nature where it's like, a salesperson wants to control the conversation, or someone from product wants to run the interview, and they want you to be a little more passive in the conversation because they want to own that relationship. I think in cases like that, you have to kind of take it one-on-one and figure out what works between you and the other person involved in the conversation. But the beauty of social media, right? You don't always have to be talking to just your customers. Talk to the whole industry. You've got, Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit, TikTok for those of us that are inclined. There are so many ways you can communicate with individuals these days digitally, that if one avenue is closed to you, open another door, right? There is so much you can learn from that perspective that you can then take back and kind of distill down into how it applies to your organization, but just getting information from those that have either, are willing to talk or willing to engage with you on social media platforms. It's a great starting point if you, kind of getting walls in other directions.
Yeah, that's interesting. So post on your feed and see that prospects can see it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a great way to also show your technical expertise too, right? Is not just saying, buy my product, right? But showing that you have expertise in different areas of the product by talking about those problem areas on social media, right? And show that you can see beyond just the speeds and feeds, as we like to call it. You don't want to just talk about the speeds and feeds of the product, but like, we deeply understand the area of the product because, we've had this customer conversation, or we've had this customer conversation, or we've been to this event where this particular topic came up. And, the more you dive into an understanding of the actual problem, the more willing people are to engage with you on the problem, not always the product, but at least the problem area.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
That's amazing.
I do want to just highlight one of the parts of the question of a part of Ramsey's question around the why, because especially so I'm just actually today is my second is the anniversary of my starting my SE career.
Congrats.
I just realized it is today. So for new people coming into the role, this sort of, when you do see this maybe a little bit of territorial behavior from sales people, and especially if your organization has specialist subforms, like for example mine does, where you have a core team that sort of owns the accounts, and then you're brought in as a specialist overlay team, right? So there's a couple of levels of ownership there, including that you have the salespeople, you have the this core team that it takes full ownership. So there's a lot of this sort of territorial behavior in some individuals, right? It's not all over the place. I do want to highlight the why. It is not because you as an SC are not good enough, right? Because that was my perspective when I started. I was like, oh, people don't trust me because I'm still new to this. Like, I don't know my things enough. Like, I need to, obviously that's why they don't want me to talk, because I'm going to, screw up the conversation. It's not you. It is most of the time the person who is being territorial. It is not allowing you to be there. And what you said, Damian, about having that conversation and having that leveraging with your sales counterpart, assure them that if you are going to be what we all need to be as SCs, which is this trusted advisor and talking to customers at a level playing field, you need to be allowed to talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some cases, I've even sat down and said, like, again, going back to the basics of Google Docs, right? Here's the 6 questions that I want answered. Has nothing to do with this deal, nothing to do with the account. You want to ask these questions and I'll just type out the answers. Like, totally fine. But it's that level setting of like, this is the information I need to be successful or to take back to this team. And it doesn't matter which of us asks it. It's a matter of that we get the information we need. And you make a good point about it's not necessarily us. And I think a danger that you'll find is if you do have this like internalization of, oh my God, it's me, I'm not good enough, you suddenly run into a lot of imposter syndrome, right? And that is super dangerous for your mental health. Don't ever go down that route.
I want to object. I think it's critical who asks the question. A sales engineer, an expert, if introduced as an expert, asking the same question again might get a slightly different answer and might be able to follow up in a way the account exec wasn't be able, because there is just not the insight into the product or the industry, maybe the expertise in the field, whatever. I think there's a huge difference. Yes, getting core question answered, one thing, but sometimes the fear is also from the account executives, oh my gosh, now they ask the same questions again, right? Or they will derail my vision for the deal and how this goes, right? So that means you haven't prepared together, for example. Right? It's all about this securing, because the customers or the prospect is something very fragile, right? It's not in there. It's not in yet. It's not a closed customer. So you naturally are afraid as an account executive, right? You want this to go good and not overwhelm the customer. So there are a lot of things why they do this, right? But we need to fight for this. We need to fight for. We are valuable, and we need to ask these questions because we will get different answers. Answers you won't get as a salesperson. I am the expert. If I ask this, I know what I talk about, and I will go deeper and get maybe out there implicated pain, the unexpected insights, right? That the client didn't even know they had this problem. This is what I'm looking for. That's why we do this. Not the standard set of they expressed some pains and let's see how we cover this, right? That's not discovery.
Yeah, it's a great point, and perhaps I should go back and add the caveat of if no other option is available, right? go to the Google Doc as a last resort, right?
Yeah.
But or if you have a staked environment like Lydia talked about, right? The hierarchy, then it might really make sense to say, okay, look, I have these questions. We need to answer them, right? How can I get in there to ask them, or how can you get me the answers? Yeah, perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a balance.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I'll also share too. Something I've done in a couple of companies now that seems to work very well is from an initial, I don't want to say a discovery doc, because discovery has like a very specific, understanding and connotation to it, but we call it a technical discovery doc. And what we do is it's 2 pages, no more, no less. And page 1 is like all about the account, what industry are they in, who are we going to talk to, what's their preferred communication method, things that you generally want to know about the account. And then page 2 is like, what is the absolute bare minimum that I need to know from a technology perspective about this customer, and then like considerations and things I want to ask. And we get it to this point where like it almost becomes a working, living template, but it's something that you share with the account team, right? And page 1, we take this into every account, every prospect and conversation, every customer. And page 1 is owned by the account exec. Page 2 is owned by me as the sales engineer. And it's like, all right, this is a very clear delineation of who's going to be responsible for what. And, it kind of lowers the barrier a little bit in terms of like, oh, I don't want you to say anything that might jeopardize the deal. Well, it's like, we don't have to worry about that anymore because we've each got our page to work from. And for lack of a better term, we have our questions kind of pre-written, or at least documented in a way we know which direction we want to take things. But it definitely alleviates some of the stress of, what kind of crazy surprise questions is the sales engineer going to spring in this conversation?
Yeah, I love this. It's just like a storyline for a deal, right? Like that really builds up in so like the backbone, maybe even, right, when you start this. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's not meant to replace like a full-blown discovery of something you need before you go into, either a POC or a demo. Obviously, that's like a well understood mechanism. This is more like if I have customer stories that I want to share or use in a conversation, how would I reshape those for either the person I'm speaking to from a role perspective or the industry that they're in, right? Or let's say, for example, again, I'll just draw from cybersecurity. Like everyone today has a CDN, right? Like for content delivery. What CDN are they using? That has a very big impact on how we talk about deployment models, how we talk about product delivery. And it's not that I need to get into the discovery of those things, but just the most common question of what CDN provider are you using, right? And that conversation can unlock a lot of doors depending upon who you're talking to. Do they even have onus of it? Or do I, again, going back to our audience conversation, right? Is this the right audience member that I'm speaking to? Or do I need to pull somebody into this audience that I haven't considered before because of the way that the organization works?
Yeah, amazing. Do we have time for a little story that occurred to me today? So I coach sales engineers, right? And today was a very interesting story because one of them, they actually sell open source software that they manage, right? That's their business model. And on the other side, there are competitors like AWS and all the other cloud providers, right? So and we agreed that he reads a book called Total Recall. I don't know if you noticed, that's the biography of Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So the pumping guy.
Yes.
So and the bodybuilder. So and the idea was read this book and come up with an anecdote that you can use in your business to explain clients why you are different. And today he told me, like, Patrick, I read this. Arnold Schwarzenegger founded a bodybuilding studio in Munich, right? So bare minimum, like devices and weights and stuff. Nothing fancy, right? Dirty room, dark, I don't know. But a lot of bodybuilders, cool people, right? And just some blocks away was the shiny big one, right? With everything nice and stuff made up, right? And still people moved to Arnold, right? Or they got there for training because they got this appeal for the people, the right advices, right? The network. So it's really interesting. And this was really applicable to the sales motion, right? That you're in some way. So those stories can really be appealing, I think, to your. And now it's the question: is it to a persona or to an audience? I don't know exactly, but I think it applies to an audience, right? So this is how I can make them aware of who's in front of me. You are the boutique shop, right? The Arnold Schwarzenegger studio, and your competition is actually this shiny studio that nobody cares about me, right? This just came into my mind when we spoke.
Yeah, so you know what it's making me think of? As you're, I like to think of audiences as for different reasons, right? You've got the audience that you sell to, but then you've also got, the audience of both peers and the audience of friends. And it's each of these, like, you have to play very strategically and being able to tap into it. And one of the things that I really love is, especially in the startup land where you're trying to craft the right messaging, find the right tweak of the product, like what is the right sales motion to deliver. And again, going back to the audience you sell to, everyone's going to have some sort of different need. But as you build up relationships in the friend audience, you can tap into that and get insights that you wouldn't normally want to ask always in a sales motion, right? So when you're working with a product and you're like, we could use this message, or I might use that message, I'm not really sure. That's kind of when you can pivot to the friend audience, right? Or even peers and just say, look, can I give you a 5-minute demo? I need feedback, right? And it's not for sales reasons. It's, or selling to them, I should say. It's really just getting insights into how your sales motion should go.
Yeah.
But to people in the same roles. So if you're, let's just say you want to sell to an executive so in my case, it would be somebody like the CISO, right? That is one of the motions you have to do, is have the strategic conversation with the CISO about how does it fit into their budget? How does it fit into their program? How does it map to like the maturity level of things that they have? If I'm not sure, instead of having that conversation with the CISO and always guessing, I'll go talk to CISO friends who are in a similar space and say, if I use this message, how does this resonate with you? What should I change? What should I tweak? Give me raw feedback, because I rather be beat up by them and say, this is garbage, don't use this kind of a thing, instead of trying that in a sales conversation. But then as I tweak my messaging to find the right thing for the role, in this case, the persona, then I can go back and to have those conversations, in a sales message, and know it will resonate more because it's something that it resonates with their peers.
What if I don't have a CISO in my friend audience? What should I do? Should I rather not try new things, or should I be brave and try it?
Oh, you should always be brave. Yeah, you should always be brave.
Be bold.
Yes, exactly. I think that something that gets lost in the sales engineering world quite often is the fact that we're people selling to people. And we like, oh my God, we don't want to screw up this deal, or, I don't want this to go sideways, or I don't want to sell on futures, right? And promise something the product doesn't do anymore. I have found more times than not that if you're just very open with people, very transparent, and say, look, we don't have this all figured out yet, right? We are looking to launch this product, or we're looking for feedback on this particular feature. Tell me what you think, right? Tell me how that resonates with you. Tell me, what am I missing or I haven't thought about from this perspective? I think most of the time you will actually be surprised by compassion that people have, right? When you humble yourself a little bit and say, I don't have the answer. Tell me what the answer either should be, or hopefully guide me to where I need to take this. And I think we as sales engineers often get lost in the technology side of the conversation and forget that we need to play the emotion card every now and then too.
Yeah. Tell me if this would work in your daily life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At the end, it's that. So can you use it? Gosh, tell me, right? What's missing? Yeah, interesting. Very good. I like this conversation. And what I realized, and you spoiled it to me, at least backstage already. You post very often, like in the last, I don't know, for long already. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks even. So
on LinkedIn,
on LinkedIn,
I try and post daily. I'm not always the best about it, but yeah, I've been posting daily for almost since January at this point. So it's been quite a while.
Okay. Then I need to go back in your feed a bit. I think I realized it 3 weeks ago, and then you popped up more often. So it really works.
Yeah. Consistency is key. I mean, I think as humans, we're always looking for instant gratification, unfortunately, but it's all consistency. But yeah, I mean, I definitely know where you're going with this, is like, how do I generate content for some of these conversations?
Mm-hmm.
It's really not hard. The post content is coming from my audience. It's coming from people that I talk to every single day, whether it's, in a sales motion, it's an internal conversation, it's, other sales engineers, and wanting to kind of connect with them and, experience the pains. And I think very unsurprisingly, you will find that, the posts that really do well for me on LinkedIn are the ones that talk about the pains that salespeople go through that many people don't realize, right? Is, the pressure around end of quarter, the craziness of imposter syndrome when, pitching a new product or learning a new skill. We're humans too. We still have our own pains and our own things to kind of work through. And, oftentimes I don't think there's always a good way for us to connect with others in the sales community to talk about some of these things. And, it's kind of coming to light more often these days as, social media is changing and morphing to be more open and more transparent about things. But yeah, I mean, content is never a challenge because it is just the day-to-day interactions with individuals.
That's interesting, because most people would object here again. Do you think it's because you are posting that your mind is actually looking for something for tomorrow? And if you wouldn't be posting, your mind is just quiet and...
No. So I will tell you, the way that I did this was just like I do for any other sales motion, right? I sat down and I thought about, who do I want to speak to? Who do I want to engage with, right? What do those personas or individuals look like? And how do they round out the audience that I want to address? And the other thing that, actually we didn't even mention yet on this call is, what channel makes sense for them, right? So if I go back to the AppSec conversation, you will find there's a ton of application security people on LinkedIn because a lot of them, signed up, they created a profile when LinkedIn was the hot new thing. But from a how do you engage with them? Is this the right channel for them? No. You will not find a lot of application security people using LinkedIn for like day-to-day conversations. There's other channels and other mechanisms. So I wouldn't post things necessarily sometimes about application security for LinkedIn because it's not where the audience hangs out. It's not their preferred digital channel. So for me, it's like I have it's actually sitting right next to me over here. It's just a one-page printout, and it's like, here are the people that I want to talk to. Here are the pain points that they have, and then here are the goals that they're achieving. And it's like looking at that matrix, I can probably come up with 24 different topics to talk about every single day.
Oh, I want to see that matrix now. Would you mind sharing at some point?
Not at all. I'm happy to share. But it seems like such a silly thing that you think, oh, well, you need the spreadsheet to refer to. But I just having it handy and every day and kind of just going back and reminding myself, like, these are the goals and the things that people experience each day in my audience that they're going through. These are the conversations that we need to be having, right? Whether it's sales related material, it's how do you address things in a product, or you'll see it in a lot of the content that I put out there, but it's those are the day-to-day conversations that need to happen, right, among my audience, because I know it's something that will resonate.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I love this matrix. Yeah, and it's an endless combination of topics at the end, right?
Yes, absolutely. So maybe we can work on a template version and post it up on LinkedIn for others to look at too.
That would be nice. I like that idea. And hopefully people would appreciate it as well. I know
I hope
I would love to have something like that.
Absolutely. All right, let's do it. Challenge accepted.
Let's do it.
Yeah, looking forward to see this. Yeah, that's great. But there's another point you mentioned. You said your audience is not there on LinkedIn completely. But I think in the audience are also prospects, right? So you're writing about security applications might attract a part of your audience which are prospects. Like, say, oh, Damian posts about this. Oh, he hits a problem we actually have.
Yes.
Does this work?
Oh yeah, it absolutely works. But there's a huge caveat here, and I want to make sure we put the underline, the bold font, and everybody really hears the caveat, right? Is you can't push it from a sales perspective, right? It's addressing the problem, talking about different, unique ways to address the problem, some of the challenges that come up in that, and making sure that the content that you're either posting or sharing or engaging with on is not inwardly focused. All right. It is acceptable. I think as sales engineers, sometimes we kind of shy away from the ask, right? It's like, oh, we don't want to make the sale. We want to talk about the problem or the technology. It's okay to make the ask, but it has to be balanced. So if 80% of your content and the things you put out there is helpful, educational, talking about the problem, the other 20% of the time, it's okay to make the ask. It's okay to say, I'm in this space. I work for this company. We have this solution, and here's how it addresses these things, right? And exactly to your point, like prospects will appreciate that, and they will see, I don't know what that product does, but he's talking about this problem all the time, and I've got this problem. Let me have a conversation about it. So it is absolutely one of the best ways to become, you call it the go-to guy or gal, right? It's really the technical expert in that case. You really are seen as somebody who truly understands the problem space, as long as you have the balance.
Yeah. It's providing the value, isn't it? It's providing that information, that expertise, that perspective even sometimes to your potential prospects or customers before you even get into the sales part of it.
Yes, exactly. And, sometimes it's you're helping them even look at topics that maybe they're very familiar with but maybe that topic has changed, maybe it's shifted and they haven't considered that shift, and you're giving them just a very different perspective. And all of a sudden it becomes they want to have a conversation with you, not because they necessarily are ready to buy, right? That's a very different conversation, but more just because they want insights. They want to understand from others who are experiencing this. And, maybe just it's a conversation about, oh, I didn't think of it from that perspective. Tell me more. Are you seeing this with other people, right? And sometimes those will turn into prospect to sales motion conversation, but other times just that conversation alone will give you better insights.
And it's amazing because even if you only have this connection, maybe had one talk, right? You will appear in the future on their feed. What was in the past from a sales perspective, you need to schedule follow-ups, right? Need to think about, how do I introduce myself because I will call or I will email, right? And now you simply appear on their feed and they are constantly reminded of you, right?
Right.
And this is something this is huge, I think. This is huge.
Yes, it's what's the term? Being top of mind, as they say, is you're always top of mind about a particular problem. And I actually saw, it's not my quote, I can't remember who I saw it from, but it was someone on LinkedIn had said, I'd rather be known than be seen. And that really, really stuck with me. It's like, you don't need to be the best person on the planet and seen in all these things. But if you are known for something very specific, you will always become top of mind when someone has that particular thing. I have to go back and look.
That is so good. I need to write that down. Hold on.
And this is actually the point why you should niche down, right? So if you can niche down in what you write about, like especially in security, if you say there are so many people out there, right? Find this niche, and even if only a small percentage of people are interested in, those who are your followers, right? And then you can, this niche will spill over in the bigger niche and so on, right? So this is actually a good way to build this. Do you agree? So start small in a niche and then grow bigger from there, or would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, so real quick, I did find it. It was Amy Velas. It was one of her posts. Who that quote came from. It was part of one of her posts. So credit to her for sure. But yes, niching down. It is the way to focus on a particular set of expertise before you go broad. And anybody who's ever seen Justin Welsh, who's very, very popular on LinkedIn and Twitter, has had a lot of success. This is one of his key messages about content creation, crafting products, doing things on a side hustle, is always master a niche first, right? When you understand, even if it's just a singular problem, when you understand that problem better than anyone else, you will always become the expert of that particular niche. And the more you have kind of niched down and become that expert, the easier it will be to see parallel problems, right? Either in a similar space or in a different space, and allow you to kind of grow outwards. If you just try and talk about everything under the sun right out of the gate, people won't really know who you are yet, and they won't really know like which area you focus on. And like even if you're consistent, your message will kind of be all over the place.
I'm going to play Patrick for a second, and I'm going to have a very controversial question. It just springs to mind. We're talking about, especially now that you mentioned Justin as well, this is all about content creation, right? And we as SEs, all three of us agree this is a very key skill for us to have in our careers. I don't think everyone is going to agree to that, because at the end of the day, we as SEs are there to just do a job, right? We're there to sell stuff alongside with our sales counterpart. And that is it. Why the heck would people even want to be involved in this whole content creation? And again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I completely agree with this is something we need to do. Why do you think we need to convince more and more SEs to think about it as content creators rather than just, talking technical head?
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't think everyone needs to be a content creator for sure. I mean, there are people who are just there to, as you said, do a job. But it's the element of content creation. It's the element of having these conversations that will help set you apart, whether it's from a your company perspective or an individual perspective, which kind of goes back to like, how do you build your own personal brand along the way? This is the thing that sets you apart, is being known for something specific that only comes from, I don't even want to term it content creation, but it comes from being helpful, right? Sometimes that means creating content. Sometimes that means picking up the phone and having a conversation, or hopping on a video chat and having, a conversation about something. Content, comes in many forms. And I think the reason, especially like any technical audience, whether it's developers or SEs, really shy away from this, at least in my experience, has been because as soon as they hear the word content, they immediately think like, oh my God, I have to write something and I'm a terrible writer. And that's just not true.
Or
right?
I'm in marketing now, like, oh no, like I don't do marketing.
Right. And you have this just element of like, they immediately think I have to write something, and that's just not true. It could be written, it could be video. Some people are really good at conceptualizing things in drawing form, right? It's actually one of my go-tos. Is I'm a terrible artist, but I know that putting something on my iPad and kind of like drawing it out, what does that workflow look like, helps bring an idea to life much easier for me. And then when I share with others, like, wow, that makes sense, because visually some people learn a lot better. Yep. So like content creation comes in many forms.
I like being Patrick.
be more me. No. That's something I thought about when I was writing the social sales engineer, right? Write a book about something and you will become an expert. That sounds quite weird, but you will realize the more you write down, you crystallize your thoughts, and you see like things that don't work. Like you thought something is true, but during arguing with yourself and doing the research and stuff, you up-level your skills like immediately, because you fill gaps, you get more precise in what you say. And I think this is critically important for sales engineers. Be in a discovery call, right? And you need to be smart, and you need to ask smart questions, right? And to be precise is one of the biggest things, right? And this will, when you do content creation, this will happen. You will be more precise, you will be more clever, you will be more fluid, quicker maybe even, right? And success will follow. Not even from posting. No matter if nobody sees this, you get one like, it doesn't matter. Just by conceptualizing, building a script, drawing it doesn't matter, right? Will up-level your skills because your thoughts are finer.
Absolutely.
A quick point also around that part, around creating that content, even if it's for nobody. And that's actually a good perspective to have. Like, you're not there to get the likes or the brownie points or whatever, equivalent of that is on your social media of choice. It is about getting the practice in of being more precise and being a better communicator. And I'm just thinking about this now because I'm helping a couple of individuals trying to get into an SE or a consultant role. And I'm realizing that after a couple of their interviews where they just had no experience with whiteboarding something on an iPad or explaining a lot of these things, because they're, for example, in an ops role or a purely technical role where they don't have to present anything. This is a fantastic dry run of creating a post on LinkedIn, creating a video, creating something that is just for nobody in particular, but just getting the practice in there.
Yes.
So if you're trying to get into an SE role, that's also for you. It's not just for people who are experts like Damian and Patrick, or people who are just trying to figure it out like me. Like, that's it. It's for people who are just even getting into it now. I'm just figuring it out. 2 years, Patrick. I'm still a newbie.
Yeah. If you want an extreme example of that, right? If you ever think about, like, if you ever give a demo or like go into a POC, it's like you always like, all right, please demo work, like nothing go wrong. One of the things that I've actually found either doing demos or POCs alongside customers is I'll actually pull up Visual Studio and start writing code right alongside them. People are like, oh my God, you're writing code alongside them? Like, what if it doesn't work? Or what if you scrap? It doesn't matter. It's not about having like the perfect set of code or messing up a deployment or something like that. It's being comfortable living in their world and like the things that they do. I guarantee you the first time they did deployment or they wrote some lines of code, it did not go well, right? Because that's how they learned. And same thing, like the more you do it, I mean, yeah, sure, sometimes my code looks absolutely terrible, but the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, especially in a demo. I remember doing this too. It's always a wet hands.
Oh God, yes.
But if you're out there, it's like, oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, yes,
Then,
absolutely. And I just wanted to follow up quickly on Patrick, what you're saying about like teaching something. Absolutely. So there's a company called Orbit Media out of Chicago, and their CEO usually does really, really good blog posts about like insights and teaching things. And he recently did a post talking about how companies have these content strategies centered around blogging, right? Every week you gotta have the editorial calendar and get your content out the door and do the blog post. And what he posited was you're actually just producing little tiny bits of information racing against the calendar that never ends. He's like, if you think about it, if you ever been to like college or university or took a course online, that's not how you learn things. Like you don't get little bits of information. Like there's a syllabus and there's a table of contents and a structure to it. And what he was saying is, if you think about writing in a blog, structuring it like it's a course, like how do I take someone from point A to point B, and at the end of, let's say, 8 weeks in a series, they now know how to do this skill like across the board. They're more likely to come back and be like, wow, I really learned something from this. Let me do this again, like on a different topic, as opposed to like a blog post on this or a blog post on that. And you're really not getting like the full picture. You're only getting snippets when they're available. I thought it was a great way to like think about how you shape content that people want to consume.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great idea. My mind is working. I think, it's tough to make because you literally need to pre-write the whole course, right? So that you can't just start over 8 weeks.
No, but it forces you to really think deeply about the subject and look at it from several different angles. So it's like 1,000% more of an uplift in terms of a workload, but you also get 1,000% more knowledge on the topic.
Yeah. That's actually reminds me of another guru of those blog posting. He's on Medium. I forgot his name, but he's incredible. He has the notion of a bestseller or blockbuster kind of article. So he says, don't publish every week, right? If it doesn't work out, doesn't matter. But have the best researched, have the longest, have the funniest, have the most entertaining post, if you can. So then this reads about 20 minutes or so, right? So and that way you can today still stand out even more because those things are long-lasting assets. They will pay dividends even in years because they will stay relevant, right?
Yes.
Just a quick counterpoint to that.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't stop you from posting regularly to get the practice in.
Yes.
On top of that.
Agreed.
Right? Because that's the thing, because this is where I find myself, right? Where I'm like working on something for ages and I never post it because like, oh, I haven't researched it enough. I haven't like rewritten it enough. I haven't done that. So there's, again, definitely balance. But I absolutely hear what you're saying, Patrick. But better just to put stuff out there to start getting feedback and start getting those muscles sort of trained, because it is about like getting the routine in, right? It was Damian like posting every week. Get it through there.
You can't write those big things if you don't know what resonates. So you need the small bits to see what resonates, to put them into the big thing.
Yeah. Building in public is always the best way to do it if you can, because like the instantaneous feedback, especially Twitter, like you putting things on Twitter, people will come back at you with comments like all day long. And it's a great, diatribe of just all these different perspectives on things. Some useful, some not, but like you're getting the feedback instead of hitting publish and then crickets. Like nothing's there. And you internalize that.
Yeah. I'm quite conscious, and I love this conversation, and I don't want us to stop, but I'm conscious we're getting close to the hour. Damian, is there anything else sort of like that you wanted to absolutely hit on in our call that you haven't had the chance because we were chatting about everything?
No, I think the conversation has been great for this call, and it just, if I were to summarize one point, it's knowing the difference between a persona or an individual and the broader audience that they fit into is kind of key to having these conversations, because your audience will constantly change and evolve every time you have either a new deal or research initiative, but the individual pain points don't change.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I learned a lot today. Thank you very much, Damian.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to help out anywhere.
I feel energized, especially after being away for a couple of weeks with COVID. It's now like, oh my gosh, like I want to get back into projects. I want to start doing things again. And this
Yes.
talk has been fantastic for that. So thank you so much, guys.
Absolutely.
So yeah, should we start wrapping it up, Patrick?
Yeah, let's start saying goodbye. No?
Yeah, so thanks for everyone in the comment section. Thanks for everyone joining in live. Thank you for the folks also watching the recordings on YouTube. Please don't forget to, if you do like it, If you want to see more of us, subscribe as well. There are things coming along. So I don't know if Patrick has said anything online, but we have future plans. So do watch the space for the future. And you can reach all of us on LinkedIn. I did post the all of the social medias and everything in the chats, and we'll be sharing that information as well. Any last words from you, Damian?
No, thank you so much for having me. And if you want to find me, absolutely on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Love
See
it.
you
Thank
there.
you.
Over and out. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. I don't find my finger. Bye-bye.